asked you to flip through slides. So want to welcome you to the Castle Valley Trailhead project, second public meeting. We met almost a year ago to the day, and I see a lot of familiar faces, including our youngest attendees here. So glad you all persevered up the hill or wherever you came from. I know there was a lot of traffic getting here. Tonight's meeting is to look at what's called the 65% design for the project, and so we got a bunch of folks walking in right now, so I'll talk real slowly and allow them to come on in. Just getting going here, so good timing. If anyone hadn't, there's cold sodas over there, water, some snacks, and there's a women's restroom. Sadly, it's broken, the one right here, not functioning, but there is a men's room here and then a women's room 2 floors down if you need, okay? So what we're I'm going to walk through a couple slides just to get everyone oriented, talk about what we're going to do tonight, introduce some of the folks that are here, and then we're going to hear about where the project's at and how the input that was provided at the first meeting is incorporated into the design, and then an opportunity to get more feedback on the current design from you all. So we're slated to be here until 6:30. We'll see how it goes. We won't go any later. Maybe we wrap up early. We'll see. So with that, let's go to the next slide. Okay, so as I said, tonight, it's actually the meeting purpose is to talk a little bit about the site, which is literally across the street, and some of the constraints there, as well as the input that you all and some of the other folks that attended the first meeting, again, about a year ago. We had just over 40 people at that meeting, plus there was an online survey, collected a fair amount of input, and you'll hear what that input was and how it's incorporated into what's called the 65% project design, specifically how some of the site constraints and the input are addressed there. And then we want to hear your input on the current design, which you'll see in detail this evening. And then lastly, hear about what happens after this meeting. What are the next steps on this project and moving forward? So we got a bunch of folks from the project team here, and we can just go around the room real quickly and let them introduce themselves and sort of what role they're playing. We'll start with the Tahoe National Forest staff and Jonathan.
Sure, I'll start things off. Jonathan Cook Fisher, I'm the district ranger here in Truckee. Thanks for being here tonight.
Teeny Hood, I am the public services staff officer for Truckee and Sierraville districts.
Katie Mansfield, Trails and Wilderness Program Manager for the Truckee and Sierraville Ranger districts.
Awesome. And just going down the list, if you're here, please stand up, just say hi. We've got the Truckee Donor Land Trust. What's up, Kevin? Yeah.
Kevin Starr here, Stewardship Director for the Truckee Donor Land Trust.
Alicia Wiseman, Watershed Science Director with the South Yuba River Citizens.
Hi, Annie Kent, and I'm the Headwater Science Program Manager also with the South Yuba River Citizens.
Daniel Elkin, Communications and Engagement Director here at Circle.
I'm Teresa Garrison. I work with a company called GHD. We are consulting engineers, and we are hired by Circle to do the design work for this project.
And my name is Austin McNerney, and I do project facilitation and mediation on public projects and recreation-focused work around California. I'm really glad to be here, and thanks to the team for the work they've done to get to this point. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I briefly touched on what we're doing tonight. After we get through these introductions and agenda review, we'll hear from Jonathan a little bit more about the status of the project and where we're at. And then we're going to hear from Alicia and Teresa a bit about the project itself and sort of building on the comments that you heard, summarizing the comments that were received last year and getting into the constraints on the site. And then really what is this 65% design? So you'll see that and some of the specifics there that are included. And then we have some maps we'll pass around to help you be able to look at it a little bit closer and formulate some of your feedback on the proposed project at this point. We've got a bunch of time really in the middle of it after you hear that and learn about where we're at for you all to have conversations, look at that map in a little bit more detail, and then hopefully fill out this worksheet or take the worksheet home with you if you'd like. We're looking for some more input, and if you can formulate your feedback tonight and leave it on the worksheet, great. You can leave it with us before you leave. Or we have the same questions as well as the diagram on the project website. And you're welcome to take a look at that and spread it to the word amongst your friends and folks who couldn't make it tonight so they can review it and provide their input by July 1st. And so that comment is really about 2 weeks from now. And then we'll take all the input after July 1st and the team will move forward with going to towards a final design. We'll want to hear from groups, and after you have your conversations and look at the design, ideally you can sit around tables in smaller groups and maybe formulate some ideas or get some discussion going, and then hear back from folks, like what are your initial takes on this design and any constructive ideas you have for refining it or improving it. Love to hear from you all. We'll wrap up with sort of what the next steps are and hear from Jonathan again on where this project goes next. And then we'll wrap up. And again, no later than 6:30, get you out of here. And so that's our meeting tonight. Okay. Try to get a sense of who all's in the room. As I said, I know to recognize some faces from a year ago, but we'd love to just show of hands real quickly. Who lives within 40 miles of the site? Pretty much almost everyone in the room, okay? Who has visited the Castle Valley during the summer? All right, during the summer. How about during the winter? Excellent. All right. And have you been there within the last year? All right. Well, it looks like we got the right people in the room for this project, and clearly you're knowledgeable about it in both seasons and recently. So, how about your preferred form of recreation? Who goes there primarily for human power? Skiing, snowshoeing, hiking? Okay. How about some kind of motorized or mechanized, bicycling, snowmobile? Okay. Mix. Is your preferred form of recreation motorized or mechanized? If you had a choice, like on any day. All right. Okay. Okay. What about non-motorized? Okay. All right. And have you ever arrived there, driven up that road, and struggled to park? Yeah. Or had other problems, like just overcrowding or not clear where the sign. I mean, you're all pretty knowledgeable of the site, but definitely some challenges, okay? Well, good. Well, thank you all for being here. It looks like collectively you have a lot of experience with the site, and that'll help with the questions. So, okay. Asking for your help with some basic, we go back one. Let's go in the other direction now. The arrows, maybe? All right, perfect. Some basic meeting ground rules. So I'm not going to read these all, but I'm just asking you all to, help each other have a productive conversation. There's definitely some different desired forms of recreation, and that's fine. That's not what this meeting's focused about. It's really the design of the site, and we want everyone to work well here. And so if anyone's got their cell phones on, that's always annoying. Phones go off. If you need to take a call, put it on ringer, buzzer, so that you can head out of the room and take your call. That's fine. As I said, the restrooms, men's room here, women's room, sadly 2 stories down. This one's got some problems apparently. And then we have some snacks back there. If there's any emergency, you all know how we got in the building. That's how we're going to get out of here, right? So just to be safe, okay? Anyone have any questions with these ground rules? Any recommendations for an addition? Okay, everyone's good. All right. Well, let me turn it over to District Ranger, and Jonathan, you can share on the floor.
Kick things off. I'll keep my comments somewhat brief, though, because I know you're all here to see the design, and that's really what we want your feedback on. First, let me say thanks for continuing with this effort. These things do take a lot of time. And in particular, this site has proven to be very challenging, both in terms of access on the road and then some of the natural barriers that we have between waterways and granitic outcrops, and then just having a strong desire to make sure we have something that fits the site. We think we've got a great design, though, so can't wait to get to it. The next thing I wanted to share was a lot of comments about how we're going to manage this site. So design aside, when we did the web-based feedback, a lot of folks chiming in on how we're going to manage this. I'll admit, a lot of those questions remain unresolved, but for right now at least, I still want to get to what does this facility look like? How does it serve? How does it serve primarily that motorized use group, which is paying for it through Green Sticker in this process? I want to make sure folks are aware that the Green Sticker funds are driving a lot of this. It's So we wanted to design a trailhead that obviously needs to work year round. We don't have snow 12 months a year, but snowmobiling, motorized use was absolutely at the forefront of a lot of our design decisions. So hopefully you see some of that, you understand how we got there, and if you don't, I'd really urge you to ask questions and engage in conversation. Let's pause there, or I'm going to pause there, and we're going to get going.
Awesome, thanks, Jonathan. All right, next slide. So just to give a quick outline of the next few slides, we're going to talk about the existing condition, the scope and funding and timeline of the project, and we'll dig into the designs themselves. Next slide. We all know where we are, right? It's right across the street. I make this though just in case people come from far away to get us oriented. So next slide. All right, so existing condition at the site, I know that seems like all of you have been there, but currently this site is an access point for off-highway vehicles and over snow vehicles and for use in both winter and summer months. There is limited parking on the shoulder. It's often overcrowded. There are no bathrooms, there's no trailer parking, there's no trailer turnaround, and there is no offloading ramp. So just calling out, existing conditions versus what we're trying to do. Next slide. And to quickly go over the scope of this project and what we'll be talking about in this meeting, this is purely a design phase of the project. So Circle's working with the Tahoe National Forest and GHD Engineering to get some designs going so that we can seek funding to construct this site. Also, as part of our project scope, we're doing public outreach and working through the CEQA and NEPA processes. Some of our goals are to reduce the health and safety concerns at the existing site. It can be pretty challenging if there's an emergency and everyone's parked on the shoulder. There's really only a one-lane egress. That can be a problem. The fire truck can't get in or an ambulance. We'd also like to reduce environmental impacts through formalization of this parking area. With everyone parking on the shoulder, there's a lot of erosion currently, so that's a big goal of our project. And then to improve the user experience is really high up there as well. Again, as Jonathan mentioned, these designs have been centered around OHV use, so improving the user experience is a central part of this project. Next slide. So where we're at today and where we've been, we began our concept designs last year. We had our first public meeting in June of last year. We received feedback from many of you and others, as Austin mentioned, through our survey, and we've taken those, and we've also gone out to the field. I mean, for many of you that were here last time we were here, we had constraints that we knew were there based on, topography and other geospatial data that we had, but we had not verified where wetlands were, where large rocks were on site, and what we actually could work with and how this would flow. So we did that all last fall. We took your comments and we wrapped them into 65% designs. So here today we're at our second public meeting. Going forward, we're going to be taking the feedback you give us, working with some other easement landholders like Nevada County and Caltrans, and working toward a final 100% design. NEPA and CEQA are expected in winter 24 into 25. There will be a formal scoping as part of that process. And then just to reiterate, we will still be needing to seek funding to implement this project. So, I wouldn't expect this to be implemented in the next 6 months to 18 months. 2 years is probably realistic, if not more. Okay, next slide. All right, so I put up some things that we heard from folks like you or others at the last meeting and through the survey. People wanted us to maximize parking spaces and minimize the aesthetics and natural features to allow for more parking and simplify snow plowing. There was a suggestion to require a pre-reserved permit system. As Jonathan mentioned, we aren't totally getting into all the management concerns through this design process. It's something that we are taking into account. Some other comments about bathrooms being elevated and larger parking stalls to accommodate trucks with ramps. access roads to be wide enough for 2 cars, etc. So we're going to get into our designs and talk about how we addressed some of these concerns. I'll turn it over to Teresa.
All right. Yeah, so I have the fun job of telling you guys what we couldn't do on the site because of all these constraints that we ran into. So since we had this last meeting in June, we had a big snow year, right? And so we didn't have snow melt out until end of July, August. So it was around that time that we were actually able to get out there and actually survey. So we were able to get topography data, figure out what's happening out there, and that dictated a lot of what we were able to do and the results of what you're going to see. So some of those things are, we were able to find land ownership. So we were able to find where different parcels of land, we were able to talk with those owners, figure out what's going on. We even brought in a new member. The county actually owns some of that land that we weren't aware of before. So we're learning more information as time's going on, which is all feeding into the design and what and how we're going to do it. The slope and topography is challenging. It's safe. So I have a slide that tells about that a little bit more. We also have wetlands and riparian zones that we are trying to avoid impacting. We have large rocks, large trees, and it does rain here, and it has snow melt, and so we also have to consider drainage. So we have to take all of these things into consideration and then find a design that will actually fit on the site. That's what we tried to do. Okay. With that, I think we want to, this is really small, so we also have handouts. And so this is the 65% design. Again, 65%, there's still time and progression. This 65% level is to show that this is feasible, the grading is doable, the drainage is doable, the site works, and we're avoiding as many of the constraints as we can. So we're mitigating those impacts. Okay? I will say that I apparently miscalculated, so I'm an engineer, and I didn't add my total up. So you'll see on the bottom it says 90 is actually 89. So yes, I'm an engineer that can't do math. But everything else is there. It should be pretty accurate, otherwise everyone rounds it. So on the site, Boreal Ridge Road, which comes up, has a slope that ranges from 8 to 12%. Through the design, we're able to reduce that to a 10% max. So some areas are still at 8%, so we have reduced to the 12% back down to 8. We understand, or back down to 10. We understand that 10 is still pretty steep, so that's kind of the best that we could do with the situation out there. And we are trying to minimize our impact on this section. You can see the dotted lines here. A bit closer. These dotted lines are boundary lines. So this parcel was originally owned by Caltrans. Caltrans actually passed it over to the county, but this is now county owned, and we're still trying to limit how much work we do on that. So we will repair that road to get it back to working conditions, but we're not trying to regrade it or reset any massive changes, right? We're just trying to reduce the slope to get us to a usable level. So that's the intent for that. We really can't do more than that. We can't really change the configuration of the road either, because the slopes are so steep coming off of it or coming back down that we don't have the room to play with to be able to get a change in that road. Okay. It's not until we get up to this upper area that we start to get some flatter sections to be able to actually have people park safely. So that's why we do that. So that's our slope. We talked about land ownership. Next. Okay. The talk about the wetlands and the riparian zone, we were able to go out, we were able to delineate the wetlands. The wetlands are shown in green. They're also shown on the maps that you guys have in front of you. So again, that is a constraint. Those are areas that we cannot impact. So we're keeping our footprint out of those areas. Okay. We also have drainage. So here you can see some blue lines that run across here. We're trying to maintain drainage and flow to be able to allow the water to continuously move through the site. We're also trying to mitigate our impact from it. So we are putting in asphalt that is an impervious surface. So that means we need to collect the runoff that hits that impervious surface and manage that appropriately. So we have to reserve space to be able to have proper treatment of that, stormwater treatment, or snow melt treatment in this case. So we also have stormwater basins that are set aside in this area to be able to manage that. So that's another one of our site constraints and something that has to take up space of the limited usable space we have available. There's a lot of rocks. It's just the truth. It's what makes that area so beautiful, so much fun to be out of. It makes it really hard to build out there. So there are some giant boulders. One of the biggest things we're worried about are these sort of glaciers, or I like to call them hippopotamuses. They hang out underneath. And so we don't really know how big these rocks, these granite slabs are, until we start digging. So that also constrains our design to the point where we're not trying to dig down, we need to put in fill. So we're trying to do as much as we can on top and not try and dig down because we don't know what's underneath there. If you go back just a minute, you can actually show some of the boulders. So all these circles are the boulders, the large boulders that were identified out there. That's not to say they're the only ones, and again, we don't know what's underground. On your maps, there's also a boundary of where the granite slab starts, and so that also hits a boundary limit where we can't really build past that range because we're on a slope. So it limits what we can do. Yeah. And I talked about drainage. Okay, so that's overall the site design. That's the constraints. That's what we had to work within. That's where we ended up with this design of having a main parking area and sort of a northern extension. The main parking area has a turnaround. It has a single flow of traffic, and the extension is just drive through and then park and be able to come back out. We did look at trying to expand the stalls, so they are wider than your average. They're wider than you would see like a Rayleigh's parking lot or a Safeway, any of those, right? So they're trying to accommodate the larger vehicles that we know are going to be coming up here to use this area, especially with equipment on the back of them. So we're trying to accommodate those. We also are looking at the bathrooms. So we did raise those up a little bit. So there's drainage courses in front of it. It's elevated. We also rotated the direction of them to put them so that they're south-facing, so that they have solar gain, so that we're not having ice build up on the front of them, so that they remain more accessible through the entire winter.
Actually, before we go back to the main design, can you just talk through about what you use to model for like size of vehicle to get around in there?
Oh, yeah. We use an AutoCAD program, and in that there's a vehicle tracking software that we apply. And so what it does is it actually, we pick a vehicle, and it will model it running through this. And so we picked a standard truck with a long bed trailer on it to be able to make sure that we hit these turning radii, just to be able to turn around. So that vehicle was used everything from the start coming off and then all the way up through the main parking area. We will have to have some sort of signage that says no trailers past this point because there is no standard turnaround. Is that covered? Okay. All right. We did also hear from you guys that you didn't really care about signage, picnic tables, stuff like that. And so we kept that all to a minimum, at least at this stage of the design. There will definitely have to be some information signage and everything else that we need to go to make sure that people are safe. But we didn't cut out a big space for picnic areas. So this is also another topic for discussion that we'd like to bring back to the group, because that's what we heard in the first round. Is that still how people feel and think after being able to sit on this idea for a year? Okay, that's the end of my stuff.
All right, so excuse me, Jonathan.
I have one suggestion.
Please.
Maybe before we go into these,
Yeah.
could we just make space for any questions about?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
So,
there's
yeah, you
definitely-
just heard a lot and saw this new 65% design with the maps in front of you. So we can take a few minutes for some group questions. Anything that stands out, sir?
Yeah, can you go back to the design? Okay. So on those parking spots, first ones, looks like, what's the size?
It should have the size call afterwards. So the dimensions are all on the designs, and there are 10 trailer spots
Okay, 10 trailers.
in the main area. There's a total of 89 spots altogether. And there's a small table at the very bottom that shows how many parking spots are in which area and the dimensions but let's. $60 by 18 feet for the trailer spots.
Okay, now we'll go in the back and then come up here, sir.
Sorry, a little late. Love this design. Like, you guys put in a lot of great work. Props. Just curious, is this going to be plowed in the winter? I know there's a snow park over there.
What's the thoughts for plowing? I know you touched on some of the management concerns aren't addressed at this point, but
Correct.
any thoughts on that?
Okay, the spot.
Yeah, so again, like, there are still management issues that are being worked out, so discussions that are happening behind the scenes to figure out how, who, when, why, all that sort of stuff. For this level of design, we did reserve a spot to have a shed be placed there that could house snow equipment. So again, we're not saying that's what's going to happen, because that hasn't been worked out yet, but we are reserving the space to allow that to occur. So there's a little bit of a spot, I didn't label it because I haven't fully explained it. There's a little right here that is graded and it's set to be able to accommodate a shed.
Yeah.
But
Awesome.
that's
it's
as
a
far as
huge
we've
winter
gone.
area. Everyone wants their snowmobiles out there, backcountry
Yeah.
skiers.
Me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, the intention is to plow, but maybe Jonathan has more, just like, I don't know.
The intention is to plow. If we want to provide access, we're going to have to deal with the road constantly. We're going to have to figure out a way to message when it's safe to access, when whoever's been staying there maybe overnight has done the work, right? There's lots of stuff to figure out from a management perspective. But the vision is definitely get it plowed.
Maybe the plow lives close by and goes up there after a storm, and there's a place for it to park and stay in between lighter storms.
Contract with Boreal seems to be a
Not out there. Yeah. All right, coming up, our
Yeah, so that answered part of my question. I mean, I was looking at the northern extension, and if we, park here with trailers in the trailer parking area, with snowmobiles, if we're plowed all the way out to the end of the road, it means that we're gonna be tearing this up. We're gonna be tearing up that asphalt, so.
So how do you get your snowmobile from where you've unloaded it
Right.
up to the trailhead?
I mean, if the
Yeah.
terrain is flat, we can do it that way, but
It's a great question.
just wanna make sure that's accommodated
Yeah,
for.
so this is actually rotated north, it's not up.
Yeah.
So the OHV access is actually this way.
Okay.
And so,
Okay, gotcha.
this zone is the loading and unloading zone, and so you would be actually taking your equipment out this.
Gotcha, so that would be our entrance.
Yeah, this is the current fire road that continues out.
Okay,
The OHV is actually accessible this way. This is the
Got it.
OHV train.
And it's right near the trailer park.
yep, perfect.
Cool, but good question. Yeah.
along that same line though, that would be east. So all those spots that are on my left-hand side there, I park my truck. It's got a sled deck in it. I've got snowmobiles. I'm not in the trailer parking because it's on my truck. And I back my snowmobile out. Has it been considered how I will get my snowmobile from there to the spot where you're saying is the unloading without going down the concrete or the asphalt and tearing it up? Because I'm gonna have to get my snowmobile from those spots to that spot.
Correct. I do think this is going to go back to, we have to figure out the management as well. There is a potential that maybe this doesn't get plowed in the winter due to access. Again, we need to figure those out. Like, the ideal is that it will be all usable.
And there are parking.
These are all as well, so wide stalls too, to accommodate tractors, trailers, everything you're bringing in there.
So that upper section has 30 parking spots as well that aren't trailer, that are larger. I mean, I wonder, like, at Soda Springs, when they plow now, there's still a good, decent layer of snow, like, not super thick, but maybe that could be something that could be worked in, is leaving some snow for, I
If
don't
you
know.
could
I don't know
capture
if
that
this-
comment today, that'd be great. We just
Yeah.
need to follow up on it.
Yeah, write that down, for sure.
Let's move on with some questions. Jonathan?
Yeah, that comment made me think about, like, let's say you circle around, you're looking for the best spot. You get to the end and, you say, oh, I should have taken the first spot. It doesn't look like there's an easy way to loop back around and go around again. like a wider radius way to go back around it. Might be an add-on there.
Yeah. Yep. Good comments.
So under that scenario, you'd have to like drive all the way back down, turn around, come back up.
You have to go to Colfax.
Nice.
You have to go to the other snow park across the street.
So let's take a couple more questions because these are really good and it'd be great to capture them on the worksheets too. So, sir, we'll come back to you and then anyone else that hasn't spoken up.
Yeah, just curious about day use versus overnight. Like, are there designated spots? Is it allowed to be overnight? Just curious.
Again, a management issue that we're gonna have to just
Okay.
postpone until we know.
So it'd be good to write on your worksheet is what's your suggestions or preference? Would you like overnight? How does that work?
Overnight, personally, but yes, I'll read it.
Any other questions to clarify on what was heard? Yes, sir.
What's the relationship with the existing snow park? Will it be considered a snow park, or is it different? If it's not a snow park, then obviously everybody's going to probably be using that before they pay $15 to use a snow park. So is there a relationship between the two, or are they two separate worlds?
Maybe Jonathan can take this.
Tell you, we're asking the same question. Okay, and so what's the state's interest? If it's not the state, could it be a concessionaire? If it's not a concessionaire, could it just be an enthusiast group? Could it be a club? Could it be a new permit to someone else? I'd ask on all these management, maybe we won't talk about it in length today because it's mostly about designs, but I would welcome those ongoing questions around management. We are asking the same questions, but I'm sure you've got some good ones.
So this is a Forest Service, whereas the snow park system is part of the state.
I won't derail the conversation entirely. I mean, it is possible, it's possible that we could have plans developed, hand them to someone else and say, do you want to own this improvement? We don't own the ski area.
Yeah.
Some of it sits on the National Forest, right? Could be the same somewhere else. So how we authorize it, how it's managed, all a little bit TBD. The design itself, though, I'd like to think carries forward regardless. But good comments.
Any other questions before we dive into some work? Okay. I want to go to the slide. All right, so what we're going to ask you around the tables, and those that are just sitting by yourself, you're welcome to join a small group of 5, 6, something like that, and really have a conversation looking over this diagram, generate some of these ideas that we've just heard, and use the worksheet. And if you didn't pick one up, I'll walk around the room and leave some on each table. But we're really looking to these questions. What is this design missing? And from your perspective and user preference, what works well in the design? What doesn't work so well in the design from what and how you intend to use the site? And do you have any concerns about what you see here? Like Jonathan pointed out, maybe a challenge there in circling around. So like those kinds of really specific feedback will really help in the next iteration, going to what's called 100% design. So we're really looking for your input here, and I'll just reiterate, this survey and this design that you're looking at are on the project website. So you can spread the word, you can think about this a little bit more if you need to let it settle or you give it some more thought. And we're looking for feedback by July 1st. But while we're here, it'd be good to get a conversation going in some small groups. We'll take about 20 minutes and see where we're at. If conversation dies out before then, we can wrap up sooner. If you need a little more time, we can consider that. Sure, we can start with 15. Give a couple minutes to get up, move around, have a snack, have some water if you need to go to the restroom. So I've got, 10 till?